Welcome back, home brewers. Thanks for joining us again for part 2 of our Brew With Us video that we made in conjunction with Hackney Brewery a couple of weeks ago. Spent the day at Hackney with John, didn't we, Rob?
Yeah, what a great day it was. Learned loads.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely loads. And it's a really inspiring place to go. Yeah. Beautiful brew house, beautiful tap room.
Spotless.
Yeah, if you're ever in the Walthamstow area, we thoroughly recommend you go for a beer there.
Yeah, and actually that whole area, the amount of breweries that you've got there, as well as Hackney, it's a great area to visit. We
brought our work back with us. We fermented it. We've got it ready to drink. We've got some in a glass here, haven't we, Rob? We're not going to say too much about it now because John is coming to us at Malt Miller HQ to try out how we've done with his recipe.
We're going to do a side-by-side.
We are going to do a side-by-side. We love a side-by-side, don't we?
Yeah. Works really well.
So stick around for the rest of the video and you'll get to see exactly how we've done and the tips that you might want to take away if you are brewing Hackney's Boogie Van recipe, which we've got on our website.
John, welcome to Malt Miller HQ. Thanks very much for taking the time and making the journey down here. What do you think of the beer?
Very close to what we were aiming for, isn't it?
It is, actually. So in my right hand is your version of Boogie Van. In my left hand is our version of Boogie Van that Jim made, actually. And he and I, when we came to the brewery, picked up a whole load of tips on various different bits and pieces, but what we actually took from it most was your dry hopping schedule and the method of blowing CO2 through the bottom of the fermenter once the yeast has been cleared and getting that really full-on dry hop aroma and flavour, making the most of the hops, basically.
Yeah, getting the most out of it. I think you've succeeded. That's really bright, fresh aroma on it. And yeah, really, really fruity, fresh. I mean, well done. You did it. I think that's.
So let's just do a side-by-side, basically. Let's start with the colour. Your Boogie Van is in my right hand here, and ours is slightly more hazy.
A touch. It's probably the centrifuge again.
Sure. And yours is slightly darker, but there really isn't.
Up to the like nominal. It's real nominal.
Yeah.
I think that is because of our kettle is probably caramelising a touch more.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot in it. Ever so close.
Okay, so are we calling that nailed?
I'd say yes.
Right. I'm pleased with
I'm not going to change that.
That's cool. So we're pleased with that. So let's move on to aroma. So this is, for me, this is where the differences just start a little. So your beer has a stronger malt aroma.
Yeah, where yours has a much brighter hop characteristic.
Yeah. Now it might be something to do with
and a touch more ester going on.
Yeah, we've got more esters here. And actually, we really noticed it as the beer warmed up slightly. It gets more pronounced. So ours is definitely a less clean fermentation profile.
Yep. But nature of the beast sometimes.
Yeah. But it's
again not a lot in it.
No.
I mean, it's you're using the same ingredients, the same rough quantities. And, But it's other than like a slight process change there.
Yeah.
They're not far off.
I'm going in.
What we starting with ours?
It's a cracking beer, isn't it? It's an absolutely cracking beer. Okay, so we've got
like that caramelly.
Yeah, it's got more
malty, not too sweet, not too dry. Like balanced on that.
Yeah. Caramel comes through.
Touch caramel on it.
Do you know? I think the bitterness is
it's close.
Yeah,
really
close.
Within a spit. I think this is just a touch more bitter.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that's the there's probably still some yeast in that.
Yeah, sure. But the hop aroma and profile.
It's very close, isn't it?
Very close.
Even on like blind taste, they're within a spit. Like you can pick out the differences.
Yeah.
But you've done a good job on that.
That's really good. Nice. So we're going to call it a clone.
Yeah.
Slight process change.
Slight process change
with the yeast. We need to get a cleaner fermentation profile. We're pretty much there. So we were talking about actually scaling a recipe is not is really not an easy thing to do. So you're
Yeah, I
brewing,
mean-
your brew length is
2,500 litres.
2,500
so, yeah.
litres, and you gave us the recipe for that, which we then had to.
And it's not just a case of like, oh, we'll just divide it by 100. It's
No,
not how it works.
It's not how it works. So, like when you go in from perhaps 20 litres to 40 litres, perhaps
Maybe,
maybe, but when you go in doing a difference such as that, it starts to.
We're talking like percentage differences of that is like 1 gram in a homebrew is not quite 100 grams in a in arbor. It's
exactly.
not. Yeah, efficiencies are different. Brew kits are different. I mean, like even on a homebrew scale, I imagine there are significant differences of brewing it from one person's like basic setup to a crazy grainfather setup.
Absolutely.
A bit more automated stuff. Like
Yeah, so I think, trying these beers, I think if we were doing a true clone of yours, the hop aroma is actually more in our version. So if we were doing a true clone, it would need to be dialed back slightly.
Just a touch. I mean, I think the main difference is the yeast.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get to that, but it's a lot more pronounced esters on this.
Sure.
Than ours.
Yeah.
And even in the flavour as well, I think that carries through more than ours. So it's a little bit slightly cleaner, but I think it's balanced, it's nice. I think you're very close.
Yeah,
it's very close.
Absolutely. I'd like, so when I try your Boogie Van, there's more of a rounded malt flavour, and I think that if we dialed the hops back slightly in our homebrew version, that the malt would come out slightly more. So you've also got the benefit of a centrifuge.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, you can really strip out all of the yeast out before you start the dry hopping.
Yeah.
What you do. Yeah.
We dry hop before we centrifuge, but we just sit on it and cold to get as much out as we can.
And actually, we had a few issues with the ferment on this beer. We struggled to get it to finish.
Yeah.
Now I think that we didn't start off with enough yeast actually.
Okay.
So I think that's one improvement that we can make is to do that. And the esters that you're talking about in our version, I think when we brew it next time, that they won't be in the profile.
Getting a good starter going.
Massively,
Just get it really active really quickly, but controlling it in a way that doesn't stall out. I think there's the other. Some people we find sometimes when a ferment kicks off so vigorously. Towards the end, kind of the energy is lost. So we sometimes drop the temperature a couple of degrees, so maybe 18 degrees rather than the 20.
Yeah.
And just let it calm down a little bit, just a touch, so it doesn't just burn out and then spend the next week trying to knocking off the final few points.
Yeah, sure. It's a much cleaner ferment that way.
Yeah.
And it gives the yeast an opportunity to clean up after itself.
Absolutely.
Rather than it's finishing and then you'll move into the packaging stage or whatever's next. It gives it a little while.
It's important not to rush it, but also not to take too long.
We've spoken before about how the recipe changes, and this is another really interesting point. So a recipe doesn't have to be that recipe that stays the same forever. And we've been chatting before about there's actually an evolution of a beer over the time.
Yeah.
So how has this beer changed sort of over the time?
Well, where it came from was an original West Coast style, and I think now it's more of a middle ground of not a soft hazy.
No.
But it's definitely not a West Coast. It's not got the pronounced bitterness. It's not crystal clear. I think that it's a compromise between the ingredients changing over time as well.
Sure.
If you have to adapt to a hop harvest or
because
how grains develop and change. And
because surely there are some years where a particular hop absolutely is banging, and then the next year perhaps not quite so good.
And same with malt as well. It's like high proteins or like nitrogen levels or whatever. So you have to adapt slightly. So this current iteration is not crystal clear. It's not meant to be crystal clear because of the high proteins in the malts this year.
Yeah.
So we've kind of adapted our process to a touch, maybe experimented with like Clarex or other clearing agent, but we centrifuge it and we dial in the centrifuge a little bit better, and I feel like it's trying to keep it as natural as possible.
Sure.
With the processes changing rather than like making drastic changes, because that's the whole point. We're not changing the beer completely to adapt to it. We have to a holistic approach to like every little bit, like what can we do? And that's I think most brewers go through this every year with big changes.
Yeah. And interestingly, you're using leaf in your boil additions are leaf.
For now.
Yeah.
I think they're
until your brew house changes.
until the brew house changes.
Yeah.
I think
And then there'll be another evolution of the beer. And
absolutely
trying to dial it back in on new kit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of our hop usage is in fermenters, so that won't change.
Yeah.
There's just more of the what we call whirlpool additions, the 80-minute additions,
Yeah.
to 80-degree additions will change, and will be interesting to see how that affects the final product, whether it's like cleaner, fresher, whether actually we get more out of it, less out of it, how we go forward from that is it's part of brewing. That's the whole experience, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, can't wait to come back and see all that. See all that happening.
John, cheers. As the person that took the lead on brewing this beer and controlling the fermentation and the dry hop, it's wonderful to hear your feedback on it, and I'm quite humbled. So thank you very much, buddy.
Pleasure, man. You come very close. It's not an easy task scaling a recipe down. I think you just reminded me of when we were home brewing and got our first big brew kit, like scaling up from 20 to 800 liters color was a big issue, and flavor profiles in ways that we wouldn't have imagined have changed. So adapting those recipes again to something else is I think you've done a good job back scaling it. It's not easy. It's not an easy task.
No, and it wasn't. We definitely ran into a few issues along the way, and that's all part of the learning curve as a home brewer. I'd strongly recommend, if you're brewing this beer at home, think about how you're going to transfer it from your FV into your kegs. You need to be doing a closed transfer. You don't want oxygen getting involved in that at all. And you need to be thinking about the tips that you gave us, John, about taking the hops off from the bottom of the fermenter as regularly as you can, taking the yeast out as regularly as you can. If you follow that stuff and John's advice from video 1, you'll end up with a cracking beer no matter what. So all it really remains is for us to say thanks once again.
Cheers.
Pleasure to spend time with you. Can't wait to come back to the High Hill Tap at some point in the future. And if you're watching at home, please check out the other videos in our Brew With Us series. We've got a few on there now that should give you some inspiration. Also, if you're interested in brewing this recipe, there's links in the description below which you can hit up. And also, make sure you buy some of Boogie Van, because it is an absolutely amazing beer. Subscribe to our channel, it really helps us out. Hit the bell for notifications so you can stay up to date with what we're doing here at the Malt Miller. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And also, if you've brewed this recipe, hit us up in the comments below. We want to hear how you got on. Cheers, have a great brew.
Cheers.